What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Crunch Time here on a Sunday. Early afternoon West Coast, late afternoon, early evening East Coast. I am Britt Devine, joined by the Midwest, Justin Van Zuden, STL Cards 84. Justin, we got to talk about this Kyrie Irving trade. What do we think? I saw the Mavs; they were like went from plus 2,500 to plus 1,200 to win the NBA championship. You're adding Kyrie Irving to your team. You know, there's a lot of ways this can go. I don't know if that's deserved, in my opinion.
No, I think that's a little bit. It's a little bit too hot of a bump for me. I think maybe it's public betting it, and I'm sure some books are going to offer some special props and stuff. I saw that in one place earlier. So, yeah, I don't. I mean, look, you got two really good players on that team now, but it's not like the Nets were doing anything with two really good players. So, and Luke is kind of in a class by himself, I guess. But, he's been injured, and Kyrie, I mean, you just don't know when he's going to go off the deep end. There's no guarantee that he's just going to be there throughout the playoffs. And, what happens if he gets pissed off at Mark Cuban about something? Who knows? It's definitely not a sure thing. It certainly makes them a better threat in the playoffs because, NBA in the playoffs is all about star power, and I get it. But, yeah, I don't think I'd be betting Dallas at, plus 1,250 to win the title at this stage. I think that's a little hot.
Yeah, you guys in chat, let us know what you think of that trade. I think I was reading some extra things that gives the Mavs some flexibility in the offseason to get rid of the Dinwiddie and Finney-Smith contracts. So if they don't re-sign Kyrie, then they have a bunch of money to throw at other people, which I think makes sense. You need something else around Luka and Christian Wood. It's probably not Kyrie because that defense is going to be absolutely atrocious, especially with Wood, Kyrie, Luka really not known for his defense anyway. But we'll have to see how it is. Interesting for fantasy. And after that performance, the first half performance against the Warriors last game, the second half, the Mavericks sort of made a go of it. I think they just decided, let's try to go for it, get something. I don't know. If I ran the team, I don't know if the locker room off-court issues of Kyrie Irving would be someone I'd be looking to add to Luka, who's just, like you said, in a tier of his own, and bring that onto the team.
Yeah, I probably not for me either, but hey, sometimes the conservative approach doesn't win. So we'll see where it goes as we get into the summer months and the finals come around, and if Dallas can stick around and advance in the playoffs, certainly if everybody stays healthy, they'll be a threat. But it'll be an interesting spring for sure.
All right, we got a little bit of a weird slate today. Fanduel locks in about 25 minutes. DraftKings locks an hour later. DraftKings is not including the Cleveland Pacers game. So what we're going to do, we're going to spend most of our time before 5 o'clock talking FanDuel. You're basically talking the same stuff, but we're going to spend most of our time on FanDuel at 5 o'clock. We'll switch over. We'll talk a little DraftKings specific stuff, anything we're doing a little bit different over there. But that's basically how we're going to handle it today. On the injury front, Justin, what are we really waiting on? The only thing I've really noticed, we're waiting on a couple Minnesota players, Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson. Do you have any takes on if either of them play, don't play? Is it up in the air, 50-50 to you? What's your take on those two at the moment?
Yeah, they definitely seem 50-50. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other. Gobert's kind of been dealing with his issue for a week or two. I think maybe now that Denver has ruled out a bunch of guys, maybe that changes their plan of attack. Maybe they decide to play it a little bit safe. I mean, Minnesota's favored by about 8 in that game now. So if anything, I would lean maybe towards them not playing a little bit more now because of what Denver has done. So that's kind of my take on Minnesota. I wouldn't plan on playing those guys, but certainly, you got to be ready if we get the news that, if Gobert is out, then obviously Naz Reid becomes a really intriguing play. So going to be interesting if you're playing on FanDuel with the lock time being an hour earlier. We're definitely probably not going to get that news before the FanDuel lock. Maybe we get it before the DraftKings lock, but then you got Memphis to deal with as well. You've got Philly with Embiid on the injury report. So it is kind of a tricky slate.
Yeah, I would imagine Embiid suits up. And I want to note too, Ja Morant is still questionable. He had there was a story. I won't know. I have no idea if it's true or not. There's some off the court issues he may be dealing with today. So if you have Ja in your lineup, just be a little bit more suspicious on if he actually plays tonight. You can search Twitter and take a read of it if you want to. But just keep an eye on Ja Morant. Maybe a little less likely to suit up than he was maybe 20 minutes ago. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's talk FanDuel. Maybe a little bit more specifically, let's dive into this first game of anybody we may or may not be playing, because this is really the only thing that matters at the moment on FanDuel is this 5 o'clock game here. So let's try to break this down. There's a lot of reasonably good plays, right? I think, you can play Mitchell, Garland, Halliburton, Mobley, Allen, Miles Turner. You can shot take on Hield, Matherian. Anything else probably gets a little too in the weeds. Rubio is cheap enough, more so on DraftKings than actually, no, we're not even playing on DraftKings. He's 4,500. I'm staring. So from my cash games, I've got on FanDuel pulled up here. The guys I'm definitely playing, these are both sites right now on my cash teams, are McCollum without Brandon Ingram. I'm playing Bruce Brown and I'm playing Michael Porter. These guys are the 3 locks for me on both sites. But I'm looking at mixing in. I think like Mitchell and or Garland are very high on the priority list tonight because we have all this other value in the late games. You're sort of forced to spend salary. And if I'm a little iffy on Ja Morant, and if, I've got to play, if you want to play Embiid, sure, he's great too. I think maybe you could drop down a little bit and maybe spend your money in the mid-tier and a couple other places too. Like a Halliburton looks pretty good, and Evan Mobley looks pretty good. He's been lighting it up here today. Would you rather play the Cavaliers going up in pace against the Pacers? Would you want to take a shot on Halliburton or Miles Turner going against the tough defensive matchup in Cleveland today?
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum because the game is a good one and there's not necessarily, a must-have guy in this game. And if there's other value that breaks later, like I'd rather have that, but you just don't know. So I don't really want to pack my rosters with players from this first game. I think, you can pick and choose a couple of guys. A little less high on Indiana, given that side of the matchup. I like Cleveland a little better with the pace up spot. And it shows in the ownership. We've got Mitchell, Garland, Allen all over 30%. So I'd be fine with those guys. I mean, they're pretty safe for cash games. I don't necessarily think you need to play all of them. Certainly you could game stack if you want to do that in a GPP, but that tends to be over-owned with these early start, the first game of the slate type of deal. So I don't really love that either. So yeah, I'm not as high on this game probably as the field. I don't have a ton of Indiana interest. And Cleveland, Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen, maybe, one or two of those guys cracks an optimal roster for you. But then, you don't want like 4 or 5 guys from this game, I think, because then if the news breaks with Minnesota, if the news breaks with Ja Morant, and you don't have enough spots to pivot, then it becomes tough. So like you said, spending some salary is going to be something you got to spend somewhere. So, it's probably somebody like Mitchell, I think would probably be my first choice.
Yeah, Mitchell's been shooting pretty poorly in recent games. If that was to come back today and against the Pacers, would be a good one, right? 2 for 11, 6 for 17, 5 for 9. There weren't many minutes here. But before, even when he played big minutes, 9 of 24, 3 of 9 in recent games. If the shooting comes back eventually, he's going to work that rust off. He's going to be in store for a good game. So I do like him. Garland's been playing well. While Mitchell has maybe not been so great, a big game last time I had a couple big games when Mitchell's been out. I think they're both fine, but you make a good point. If we're going to try to get a Naz Reid in there, right? And then we have all this other salary. I don't know. Maybe if you are trying to get Naz Reid and the Rudy Gobert news breaks that way, maybe you do want to have these guys because they're part of the salary that you're going to need to spend anyway. If that makes any sense, Justin. I think there's a couple ways you can think about it from that perspective. If the Minnesota news breaks this way, breaks that way, I think I would prefer Mitchell over Garland, but I'm even looking at a guy like Mobley specifically on FanDuel. They all just sort of fit in the salary savings around the Pelicans guys, around the Denver guys, and then you just mix in 1 or 2 other spends, and I think you have a reasonably nice lineup. So I don't mind either one of those. I want to round out some more of the FanDuel picks here today, and maybe we can talk through on FanDuel the best value plays. So which ones? I'm just going to sort by RotoGrinders value on our lineup HQ here. Bruce Brown, biggest RotoGrinders value. You'd see, I've pulled up here. This is actually, are you concerned about this with you take KCP, Aaron Gordon, Jokic, and Murray off the court? Bruce Brown is the second highest minutes, and he's minus 2.5 fantasy points on the season with all these guys out, Justin. Does this scare you?
No, not really. That's not a very big sample. I mean, it's what, 150 minutes, couple hundred minutes.
198.
That's 4 or 5 full games. There is a little bit of noise there. I mean, the usage is fine. It's maybe a little concerning, but he should be fine.
Yeah, I'm still playing Bruce Brown. Court IQ be damned. I'm taking the usage and not the fantasy points is what I'm going to be looking at here. So I like Bruce Brown quite a bit. He's on the top of my value list. I think you can make some reasonable calls. Najee Marshall is someone I want to talk to you about because lately it hasn't really been great when he's gotten to play a lot of minutes. If you go game log hunting, there are some ones a little farther out, but recently when given minutes and playing time, it hasn't really been pretty. Is he sort of a must play for you today from the cash game perspective? We've got him at 52%, just over 30 fantasy point production. That's nowhere in his recent history. You do have to scroll back a little bit and you get a little more of it. So I understand where the projection's coming from. Do you like the longer term or are you scared at all off by the short term performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fine. I certainly don't think he's a must because you have other options at those same positions like Brown and Porter and stuff. So, yeah, I don't mind Marshall. I think if he comes out in your cash games, that's fine. But I don't think you absolutely need to play him. I prefer the Nuggets guys a little bit better. But I don't really have a strong take on Marshall. Definitely would be underweight on GPPs though at that high ownership. I don't feel super comfortable with him at 50+% ownership in my GPP builds, but I don't mind him in cash.
Yeah, I think I do have him in cash. I'm not thrilled about it, but he sort of fits in there salary wise, I think, on both sides pretty well. So along with Bruce Brown, I'm on Michael Porter. Should be, I don't know, right up there with Bruce Brown in terms of usage increase. Although on the season, again, he's only got 97 minutes. So basically half of what Bruce Brown has with these guys off the court. And it's really hasn't, the fantasy production +4 fantasy points. The usage isn't as high of an increase as I actually thought. The fantasy production's there. I have no qualms about using him on sites today. Love Michael Porter. After that, we can get in the weeds, right? So is it a Larry Nance, a Zeke Najee? You've got Hernan Gomez in there. You've got a bunch of other, ancillary players that we don't normally talk about. So maybe rank after the Bruce Browns, the Michael Porters, and I think Najee Marshall. Where do some of these value plays come from today? And what are the ones more likely to succeed? And if there was anyone else you thought, you said you'd be a little bit more down on Najee Marshall than the field. Is there anyone else that sort of falls into that category for you?
Not really. I mean, I think Zeke Najee is interesting, particularly if Gobert sits. I like him for the upside at a little lower ownership. Hernan Gomez and GPPs, I think is a really strong play too. So, getting away from Marshall in some of your GPP builds, I think makes sense. Hernan Gomez, Najee, those are the guys that I think I like a little bit better that I'll mix in. I mean, Hernan Gomez is 4,100. He's 3K on DraftKings. So definitely guys you don't want to sleep on this slate. If they're at, half the ownership of Marshall, and it's certainly reasonable to expect that they could match this production at half the ownership and a cheaper price too.
Mm-hmm. If anyone does see any news on John Morant, please let me know. The Fanduel does lock at 5. I'm hoping maybe we hear something by 6 o'clock. I'm not holding my breath, but if someone does see it, please let me know. You can tag me in Discord or on YouTube. It would be greatly appreciated. What about like the Larry Nance, right? We've got him at 26 minutes, can be a stuffer. Has, always plays a little bit better on FanDuel with the steals and blocks than he does on DraftKings. I like him quite a bit on FanDuel today. I believe, let me look. He's basically like the last man in or the first man out on my FanDuel cash team. I haven't decided which way I'm going to go right now. I like him with no Brandon Ingram. It's against Sacramento. I think he's pretty interesting tonight.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely guys. Somebody like this is going to win a slate tonight, and there's going to be some landmines here. There's going to be some upside here. Like throw in all those other New Orleans guys that with the matchup, the total that's come down a little bit, but 226 in that game. But you've got Hernan Gomez, Marshall, we've already talked about. You got Nance, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. Like those are the guys that if you look at Marshall, we got a 52% ownership on FanDuel. We've got Nance at 15, Jones at 18, and Murphy at 14. So, in GPPs, I definitely don't mind it. I think Nance probably gives you the most upside because of what we've seen in the past from him. So, don't mind those calls in the potentially higher total late game of the night.
Yeah, I've got an under on this one. So I subscribe to a bunch of like trend data and things like that one. And this there's a trend in this particular game for this season. That's it's 27-1 to the under, Justin. So I've bet the under on this game. It gets a little bit in the weeds when you're looking at certain things, but that Sacramento Pelicans game, even though the unders come down to 220, I got it at 227, and it might be down to 226. The under looks like a very strong play in my opinion today. So just if you're looking for a bet out there, that is one I'm out there on. All right, if you guys want to throw out any questions, let's keep them FanDuel specific into the Discord or in YouTube. You can go ahead and do that. I'm going to get Justin's overall tournament takes, anyone else, in just a second. And then we'll field FanDuel specific only questions up until 5 o'clock. And then we'll switch over to some DraftKings talk. So from an overall tournament perspective, what are some of the other takes you might have? People got 10 or 15 minutes left to make some adjustments. Justin, how are you handling the overall slate? Thoughts on ownership, game stacks, et cetera, et cetera?
Hang on. I was doing the core plays on the weekends is a little bit of a challenge when all this news breaks and then you're on the air. So, all right, I just posted my last update. If anybody was looking at the tables for the core plays, those have been fully updated for all the injury news and all that stuff, at least what we know so far. Obviously, there could be more later. But other spots that we haven't really talked about. So, again, Memphis is kind of pending. I just want to make sure this doesn't get lost in the shuffle. But if Morant doesn't play, Desmond Bane rises to basically the top of the wish list tonight, though it's not the best matchup. We still got a 230 total in that game. Bane is 7K on FanDuel. He's reasonably priced. And if Morant sits, remember, they're already without Dylan Brooks because he gave Donovan Mitchell a shot in the cherries the other night. So Brooks was suspended tonight, and Steven Adams is out. And if Morant is out as well, Jaren Jackson's still questionable. So don't forget about some of these Grizzlies guys. Xavier Tillman, I think, becomes a lot more interesting if Jackson sits. Bane, obviously, if Morant sits. And Bane is playable regardless. John Conchar was kind of the chalk value earlier in the day. With all this other news and the Denver guys now, he's not, but still grades out relatively well in projections. I don't love the Knicks tonight, but I mean, Brunson's a guy that still went nuts yesterday despite playing through an illness. So he's always a guy you can target in GPPs. Sabonis doesn't have a lot of ownership tonight. So those are a few of the other plays. Maybe if you're looking to get a little bit different in tournaments, Siakam, you got to spend salary somewhere, and don't these guys that you can get on the high end. We got Brunson at 20% ownership, which isn't a lot on a 5-game slate. Siakam at 20. Sabonis is even lower than that. So those are guys I don't mind putting in some tournament builds.
One guy I like is Kevin Huerter. I like his 3-point prop. I got it at plus 130 this morning. I was up early, and I don't understand. A couple of the sites had him up at plus 130 for 2.5 3-pointers. It's now basically the standard minus 115, minus 120. But he's taken at least 7 3-point attempts every game Fox has missed, and 2 of those have been 9. He chucks threes a lot more once De'Aaron Fox is not into the lineup, and going against the Pelicans, a pretty neutral 3-point matchup. I do like him to hit some threes, maybe more of a DraftKings play for that specifically. But if you were looking for a bet, the odds have come down from when I posted it on Scores and Odds, but I still think it is a reasonable bet at the minus 115 for him to go over 2.5 3-pointers tonight. And I like him. I think he's got a little bit of upside. His points prop is like 14.5. Go hit that too, because I think that's pretty much a gimme. He's gone over that every time as well when De'Aaron Fox has missed a game. Let's go take some questions. I'm going to go to Discord first. I got to get out of the Chiefs prop shop and go to the NBA crunch time. Let's see here. Carolina guy, favorite single entry stud or stud. So we didn't even really talk Joel Embiid, right? Joel Embiid's probably, your cash game center, I think if you wanted to maybe not play the Larry Nance's and the Zeke Najee or Najee Marshall on FanDuel right at the power forward, maybe you could play a Siakam who, always has an all-around game. Maybe you could play a Jared Allen or someone like that and not play Embiid. You could always play Sabonis too. Sabonis probably basically a lock for like the 45 fantasy points with upside for more tonight. But those are all guys that I like if you're not going to play Embiid. But Embiid's definitely a guy worth paying. I mean, he has the highest ceiling for sure of anyone.
Yeah, and the ownership will be down because of, some concern, obviously, about his injury status. And even though it doesn't seem like he's in a bunch of doubt, he still kind of had that Q tag throughout the day. And, people that aren't able to follow up and check their lineups, all afternoon probably haven't been banking on playing him. So I think the ownership, we've got it at 30%. I'd be surprised unless, we get news in the next 10, 15 minutes. I'd be surprised if his ownership ends up being that high. So yeah, I definitely don't mind him in cash games if he's a full go and if you're not going cheap at center. But given all the cheap center options or the cheap front court options, it's a little bit of an interesting dynamic there, because do you want to play Embiid and not go cheap at center, even though he's got an injury designation, or do you want to go cheap at center, but then you don't have a lot of guys to spend up for at the other positions because, you can't count on Morant right now either. So it's just really, really interesting to see how this is all going to play out.
People are saying Embiid's questionable game time. Like, I'm fully expecting Embiid to play. Is basically like every game. The line is pretty forthright in telling you that Joel Embiid is going to play tonight with them being a 4-point favorite in New York. So I'm expecting Embiid to play. Pretty much no questions asked. All right, couple aside wants to know, FanDuel cash Mobley or Scotty Barnes straight up. This is definitely Mobley for me. Barnes, I don't know. I'm not really a Scotty Barnes fan. He can always have those big games, but he can certainly, I think he's more likely to have like the 25 fantasy point game than an Evan Mobley. I'm on Mobley. Mobley's playing well. He's really coming into his own right now. Very consistent. It's against the Pacers. It really doesn't get much better than that for Mobley.
Yeah, no, I like the Cavs bigs. It just there's not a whole lot in that mid-range up front. You're going to see a lot of people either going expensive or going with the value guys that we've talked about. So if you're looking to go mid-range, you find yourself in that 7K range. You can't quite get up to Embiid. I think those Cleveland big guys are just fine. So Mobley, Allen, flip a coin between the two for me. I usually, have trouble choosing between the two. Allen is a little bit cheaper, so maybe that is your tiebreaker if you've only got the salary for him. But I do like them as well tonight.
Let's see. Is this Raymond wants to know D'Angelo Russell or it's Jay Murray? Is that Jamal Murray? Is there another Jay Murray playing tonight? I don't believe so, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah,
Jamal is out, so
yeah, Murray's out, so that's going to be D'Angelo Russell for sure. Raymond on that one. Would you fade the Indiana game for FanDuel, GPP, and cash? I am definitely not. Now, if Ja ends up sitting and Rudy Gobert ends up sitting,
which I think is very possible.
It's possible. I might dislike my decision. I think you're probably playing one of Mitchell or Garland, and you can throw Evan Mobley into the mix as well as a big. If you don't want to play Mobley, you certainly can work around him. But I think you're definitely playing one of Mitchell or Garland, and I prefer Mitchell for just $100 more on FanDuel specifically. You can fade it if you don't, or if you do fade them completely. Maybe Ja plays, maybe Gobert plays, maybe one plays, one doesn't. It's just a little tougher. I think you're going to miss not having, and don't forget, you got Halliburton too. Halliburton can throw up a 50 fantasy point game against anybody. They're not holding back on his minutes since he's come back from injury. I think you might regret it if the injury news doesn't work out. So I tend to play the what I know in cash over trying to play the guessing game. So I'm certainly okay playing 1, 2, or maybe even 3 of Mobley, Garland, or Mitchell, and I do prefer Mitchell over Garland if I'm choosing between the two guards there. NBA DFS wants to know Braun or Bones with Denver being short on guard. So these are sort of like the secondary value plays tonight. If, and you can, Kanker will talk about a little bit more on DraftKings. I think he's a reasonable play over on DraftKings. But these other value Denver players, how do you rank them? And then which of Bruce Brown, Michael Porter, Zeke Najee would fail in order for one of them to sort of catapult into a big game?
Yeah, I don't even know if one of the other ones necessarily has to fail. I mean, the entire roster is priced under 6K on FanDuel. So it's not like, it's not like somebody's likely going to kill you. I think it would for Bones Highland to get there. I mean, for Highland and for Braun, if Bruce Brown goes nuts, they're probably not getting there. So Brown is the guy that, A, the ownership's really high, and B, he's going to be soaking up guard minutes and maybe handling the ball some. So, I think Brown is the guy that directly correlates with Highland and Braun potentially having bigger days. So if you're going to go after one of those guys in a GPP, I think Brown is the fade. I think Braun is probably the better play, and he projects a couple points better for us. But, I mean, it's a bit of a guessing game with how that's going to shake out. They'll probably just ride the hot hand.
Can you play those in a FanDuel tournament? What size? Like in a single entry, you're probably not going that deep.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you probably have to be 10, to throw them in. Like, we've got Braun at 15% ownership. I don't think he's a horrible play. Like, if I was doing a 3-max and, maybe he makes one of those. Highland, I'd have to be probably 10 lineups deep before I got there.
All right, that ends the Crunch Time Discord. I'm going to go over to YouTube, see what you guys are asking about. Eugene, Embiid and D'Angelo Russell or Sabonis and Van Vliet. That one is like super. Van Vliet's playing really good right now. I know Russell is too. Which one do you prefer between those one? I think that's pretty close either way.
Yeah, I like the first one a little better, but I don't think you're doing that wrong either way.
All right, let's see a couple more. Concher on FanDuel, 3,900. What's your interest level in him?
Yeah, I still like him. I mean, the problem is though that there's not a big ceiling, so it's not like he's the best tournament play. And cash games, maybe you're ending up on some of the Denver guys instead, or you're landing on Najee Marshall. Like, I don't really like him better than those guys. So, yeah, Conchar has dropped down my rankings list kind of throughout the day. Like, I think he's fine, but it's just kind of a weird spot because he's not the best fit for a tournament, and the cash games, he's probably, other guys pass him up. I like him a little better, I think, on DraftKings where you have one less game.
If Ja gets ruled out, does that increase your likelihood?
A little. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he directly benefits all that much. Certainly, maybe he gets a couple extra shots, but, Bane is the guy that you'd really want in that case.
All right, a couple more. Let's see. Just trying to see if we have any more questions. Terrence Davis on FanDuel, not someone I'm really interested in just about any format. How about you tonight?
Yeah, not really. I was going to look and see
We got 15 minutes. I mean, I'd play Davian Mitchell for cheaper for sure without even thinking twice over Terrence Davis.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to mix and match the minutes there. We didn't see anybody really benefit all that much in the last game that Fox missed. Davis still only played 18. And that, the per minute production, I know he had 29 fantasy points in 18 minutes, but he's usually not that kind of player. That's a little bit of a one-off spot. So, yeah, I'm not interested in him either.
Yeah, Mitchell could certainly. I know he's not really doing a lot either with his time, but I think he's going to have more minutes generally most nights, and he has the ability to post a line just like that in a one-off situation. So I think Mitchell would be the play for me. Going back to Discord, thoughts on Sabonis? Absolutely. If you can't, sorry. Oh,
you all right?
Yep, had a cold all week long. Not the COVID. Already got that done about a year ago. Just the little sniffles. If you can't get to Embiid, Sabonis is like a rock solid lock consolation prize. I think he's almost guaranteed that 45-ish fantasy points with the ability to have the 55, 60-ish type game to maybe not go toe-to-toe with Embiid, but to match him. I think he's an absolutely great play tonight.
Yeah, no problem with him at all. And he's been a double-double machine. I think he leads the league in double-doubles. So no problem with him.
Let's see a couple more questions. None on YouTube. Back to Discord. I see a couple people typing. It is 5 o'clock. We're going to go to DraftKings talk in just a little bit. So hold on. I'll just take a couple more questions and then we'll talk DraftKings. Beaner wants to know Sabonis or Edwards, FanDuel, GPP, and cash. This isn't even close to me. It's Sabonis. Both for me, without question.
I like Sabonis as well.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to do it for the FanDuel question portion. Let's jump over to I don't know what I was going to say. DraftKings. The same core for cash over there. Bruce Brown, CJ McCollum, Michael Porter for me. So I'm looking at maybe a couple players I wasn't using, and I'm staring at John Morant on my DraftKings team, and I'm waiting on news. Now we'll have this because on DraftKings, this is a 6 o'clock game, so we're going to know what happens on there. If Ja's out, my DraftKings team is going to totally change. But I'm looking at basically spending up on an Embiid, on a John Morant, and playing all the value guys, right? A Bruce Brown, Michael Porter. You've got we talked about Najee Marshall, but then you can mix in guys like Kankar, right? What do we have him projected at? I think we have him at something close to like 28 minutes, 22 fantasy points. He's pretty interesting at 3,200. You've got Hernan Gomez is the min price at 3K. Do you think he's going to play his projected 22 minutes tonight? We know he's a fantasy point per minute monster when he's out there. Do you, I'm going to pull up this Pelicans minutes rotation here and tell me, is Hernan Gomez going to hit the 22 minutes out here tonight? Because if he hits that, 3K.
Yeah.
That's
if I was forced to choose a side, I'd take the under.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I worry about him a little bit in this matchup, but he's still going to project well. If you took him down to 20, he'd still project well. So, yeah, it's not that I don't like him, but yeah, he's definitely not going to be playing 35 minutes. But
yeah, not that much. So he's someone I like simply because he's 3K. I think he's one of the better overall value plays on the entire slate, just to get that 3K min price. Lets you get an Embiid, lets you get just about anything else you want, all the value plays, all the Denver players. And then if Ja plays, I do like Ja if he plays. He's a great way to spend some money on DraftKings. And if he doesn't end up playing, I'll switch it around. My lineup's I'm going to probably move away from a Kankar or maybe a Hernan Gomez, right? Because going from a Ja Morant to, let's say, a Fred VanVleet or a Bane, right? You just mix it in a couple of these other Memphis guys that you're going to want to get in there. Your whole lineup's going to get moved around. So I'm just sort of waiting on that. Don't really know how it's going to play out. If it's just the injury, I think he probably plays. If there's any blowback from what's happening on the social media currently right now, maybe he sits out tonight. And that's all. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see on that one. So that's sort of my approach for DraftKings right now. Do you like the Embiid, Ja, and then stars and scrubs type build, or would you maybe forego one of them to maybe make it a little bit more balanced on DraftKings tonight?
No, I do like the stars and scrubs build because you don't have a lot of those mid-range guys, right? You don't have the Cleveland kind of quartet there of Allen, Mobley, Mitchell. You don't have those guys on DraftKings. So the stars and scrubs build makes a little bit more sense. Plus with, the Embiid questionable tag and the Morant questionable tag, you got an hour more to react to the news on DraftKings. So Minnesota, depending on what happens there, I think the stars and scrubs build makes a lot more sense on DraftKings. Plus, you've got that salary floor of 3K with a few guys like a Hernan Gomez, whereas, on FanDuel, they're not that cheap. So to speak. So yeah, I like the stars and scrubs build on DraftKings a little bit better.
Is there anyone specifically on DraftKings that you are eyeing a little more than on FanDuel salary wise? I think Kankar is probably the one guy, and Gomez for me, but they're both drawing reasonable ownership. Is it just those two or anybody else for you?
Yeah, that's all kind of just in terms of salary. I don't think there's anybody else. Like Hernan Gomez is the one. I think that stands out to me at 3K. Marshall at 4,200. But again, these guys are all chalky. Hartenstein maybe, at 4,000. But yeah, not a whole lot of other differences.
Yeah, I like Herder. I mentioned him on the FanDuel portion. Always plays a little bit better on DraftKings with a 3-pointer. If he hits 3 or 4 3-pointers, an extra point and a half, 2 points, something like that looks pretty good. I like Fred Van. We didn't really talk too much Fred Van Vliet, but dude's been playing great. Has a couple of ceiling games recently into the 50 plus at a 73. It's against Memphis, who's probably going to be scoring with or without John Morant tonight. Are you on board Fred Van Vliet? Is he your favorite? He's probably my favorite Toronto player, and I think he's a little bit more in play on DraftKings than he was on FanDuel for me.
Yeah, he is at 8,400, and plus, again, a lot of that ownership that would be on Mitchell for FanDuel. Van Vliet kind of fits that same type of price, same type of projection, 231 total in this game. So, yeah, don't mind him and Siakam if you're able to get him.
All right, and then I guess we'll take some questions. So let's go to DraftKings specific questions. Throw those in the Discord, throw them into YouTube. We'll check all that out. First, I want to thank our sponsor, Fanduel, for hooking us up with a sponsorship on the show. And Fanduel is ready to hook you up. You probably all have a Fanduel sports betting account if you're in a state where you are allowed to sports bet. But if you don't, they have a up to risk-free $3,000 first bet, which is absolutely ridiculous. So they boosted up probably for the Super Bowl. It's normally $1,000. But if you are new to a sports book and you're in a sports betting state, or if you live next to a sports betting state, make the drive, because the $3,000 risk-free bet, check the terms and conditions on it, is literally about the best thing you can get. There are certain ways to play it. You do have to have a reasonable bankroll size to be able to take advantage of that. Just make sure what you're doing with that, if you have the ability to do it and it's within your means, you're really not going to get a better sign-up promotional offer than what FanDuel is currently doing. So if you are in a sportsbook state or next to one, or you want to fly into one just to be able to take advantage of it, it's not the craziest idea. It is a really good promotion. Make sure to check out FanDuel for that one. All right, go into Discord, see a couple people typing. Let's see. Oh, no, Britt got COVID at Disney World. No, so I'm in the Disney sense. So I went with December with a wife and the new baby. Justin, what do you think of taking a Disney trip with I think I had a 6-month-old at that point in time. It was for the wife more. Me, I've gone so many times now, and it's very different going with a child. I have realized than just going without any children. Going with a 6-month-old, is that something Justin would do?
That'd be a hard pass for me, man. I of course, and we've been a couple times with our kids, so but when they were older.
Oh,
for sure,
I want to jump in here. So Ja just got ruled out, which I thought was a reasonable possibility with what's happening on social media. So let's go through Memphis here. We'll talk Disney World in just a second. And maybe we can. So I'm definitely going to regret playing 3 Cavaliers in my cash game on FanDuel. That's for sure right now. But anyway, that's in there. What are the swaps? Who's going into the DraftKings? I'm going to find a way to get Bane in there.
Yeah, you have to play Bane.
Would you play Concher over for 300 more over like a Kankar and those type of guys right now? I think I would at that. Personally.
Yeah, I think I'd play him over the Zeke Najees and the Kankars. I'd put him on the level maybe with Najee Marshall types now. But yeah, those are the bumps. And then again, I don't know if we've seen anything on Jaren Jackson, but if Jackson is out as well, then I like Tillman quite a bit too.
Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. is active and available tonight. John Morant, wrist soreness, is inactive along with Steven Adams. So
yeah, so Bane and Tyus Jones are the guys you give a bump to.
Yeah, so let's get what's Tyus? Tyus is what, 4,200? Let's see here. Hopefully, I'm sure someone else has been nice enough to queue this up in Court IQ for me so I don't have to click through everything. Let's take a run through this and see Memphis's usage with Adams and Morant off the court. Great. Someone else was smart enough to do that. Oh, I guess I got to take Brooks off the court too, right? I forgot he's out there too. So one person is smarter than the other. Let's see what it looks like for Memphis, see if we can gleam into anything here. Biggest fan of Danny Green, probably not on that. Brandon Clark, it basically gets spread out across the board. Baines, usage, fantasy point production up. Jaren Jackson, usage, fantasy production up. Tyus Jones, he's pretty much in the same spot anyway. He's just going to play more minutes. So his per 36 fantasy production with all these guys off the court, around 36 fantasy points. Those seem like, we've got Bane at 42. That seems pretty reasonable. Jaren Jackson around 50. I mean, these guys look like pretty reasonable priorities to me at the moment.
Yeah, definitely like Memphis a lot more now for sure. I mean, without Brooks and without Morant, there's a lot of stuff to go around for them tonight.
Would you fade? I'm gonna have to completely redo my DraftKings cash team. There's too many different things for me to try to get to right now. On FanDuel, what would you swap to? What's some of your priorities? I'm a little out of reach here because I locked in Donovan Mitchell. Would you play Tyus Jones on FanDuel, who is 5,800 over Bruce Brown, who's 5,500?
Probably not. I don't think so. I think I play Bane still, probably at small forward. Tyus Jones isn't a must. Big price difference there between FanDuel and Draft.
Yeah, if you had, so how much is Bane on FanDuel?
7K.
So I'm looking, yeah, 7K. I'm really stuck in a rut on FanDuel trying to swap around because I play too many Cleveland guys. So that's not really going to work.
I said not to do that.
Listen, this is what makes markets and why you make money and I don't. But it is what it is. But if you have the ability, I think on FanDuel, I would definitely try to get in. Let me just bring up the Memphis game probably on my screen. Would probably be easier for everybody involved. So we've got Bane 7, Jaren Jackson 7,800. If you looking back, Evan Mobley was 7,600. Jaren Jackson or Evan Mobley? Looking back,
I'd still probably take Mobley. Like I like Jackson, but dude fouls a lot, and sometimes he gets in the doghouse. Like I think Jackson's a really strong tournament play, but I feel like Mobley and Allen probably a little bit safer.
Yeah, Concher. Any interest in Brandon Clark at all, or do you see him really having any sort of uptick up to? We had him at 18 minutes. Do you think that gets up to like 25, 26 tonight somehow in the rotation?
Probably not, as long as Jackson's playing. Like if Jackson was out, that would change that discussion. But with Adams out, you still got Tillman and Clark, and everyone's just going to pick up an extra couple minutes. Like our projection should be pretty good there, I think, for the front court guys.
All right. I got the bat signal from the wife, so I've got to head upstairs in just a couple of minutes. Is there anything else from Memphis? We'll take some questions, maybe from the Discord, if anyone has questions on the Memphis players. Let's see what you guys hear. Here we have Jamino. Chat said the old data. Let's see here. Let me refresh and see what the latest data is. I see Jamino questioning that. Oh yeah, why would you play all the Cleveland guys? Yes, exactly. I like the Cleveland guys. I think they're in a really good spot tonight. I don't see any questions. I would really like to see if you guys have any questions on the Memphis players. Siakam or Jaren Jackson on FanDuel. So I really like Siakam at center if I have to. So that is one of the spots I can swap around to tonight. What would be, let's say I'm able to get Desmond. Somehow I'm able to switch from Michael Porter to Desmond Bane, and that involves switching from Siakam to Jaren Jackson, and maybe I'm doing something trying to get a Tyus Jones in there, right? Does any of that make sense to you, Justin?
Yeah, I mean it does. Like I certainly wouldn't prioritize getting to Jackson. I don't like Jackson as much, I think, as the field's going to. And this is all gonna, it's all gonna take another loop when Gobert gets ruled out, and then you got to play Naz Reid anyway. So, it's all still kind of up in the air. But Jackson is not a guy I'd be working my lineup around to get. If it makes everything else work fine, then go for it. But not a guy I would be prioritizing on his own.
Yeah, and then on DraftKings, Bane, Tyus Jones for sure I'm going to end up on. And would you if it meant not playing Embiid to get the Jackson Bane combination in there somehow, do you think that's a reasonable swap to make on DraftKings? Because I know a lot of people were going to end up playing Embiid.
I mean, not for me, just because I don't think this is all glory for Jackson. Like I like Bane, I don't like Jackson as much.
Yeah, like you said, the propensity for fouls, the 50 fantasy points per 36. The key there, per 36.
Yeah,
he's got to get to that
per 36. He almost never gets to the
per
30.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind with Jaren Jackson Jr. A couple more Pacers Cavs game. Siakam or Randall tonight. That's an interesting one. I really like Siakam. I know the projections have Siakam slightly ahead, and I know he's cheaper on both sites too.
Yeah. I like Siakam too. I've saw some numbers are slightly alarming this morning. I don't have them in front of me right now, but Randall's performance on the second game of back-to-backs has been a little lackluster this year, and the Knicks played yesterday. So, yeah, I like Siakam as well.
Okay, Knicks played OT yesterday, right? But one thing we know for sure, they're all playing 35, 36, 37 minutes tonight because that's what Mr. Thibodeau likes to do with those guys. I got to check Discord one last time. Let's see here. Tyus Jones and autoplay, even with the Nuggets value. That's from Steve OJ. I would say on DraftKings,
Yeah.
I'm going to play Tyus Jones with some of the Nuggets value, and I'll have Desmond Bane in there too. I'm just going to have to rework quite a bit. I know the projections team isn't in there, but maybe let's spend a second here real quick. If I had to redo a core, right? Tyus Jones, he's going to lock in there. I'm probably going to put Bane in there. I'm probably going to put Bruce Brown on my DraftKings team. I'm probably going to put Michael Porter Jr. on my DraftKings team. Right? You've got 7,000 left, right? So you can mix in value. You can probably get a beat onto this team, no problem with some of the other value plays. This is what my DraftKings core would probably look like. Add in, I'm definitely going to play CJ McCollum too. So add him in there. 6,800, 3 spots. You can get Embiid with a couple of the 3K crappers, or you can maybe go to the 2 mid-tier guys and 1 other mid-range value like Najee Marshall or somebody like that with 2, maybe a Siakam or somebody like that. Sort of how I think my DraftKings team would probably come up. Does this sort of core make a lot of sense for you, Justin?
Yep, that's the 5 guys I have tagged right now.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, that seems exactly the 5 I would want to play on DraftKings if I was making a core for just about any lineup right now. Van Vliet or Harden, and then Siakam over Sabonis. I would play Sabonis over Siakam in a vacuum. I do like Siakam, but I definitely like Sabonis more. Van Vliet or Harden is pretty interesting. Van Vliet's been playing so well. I like Harden quite a bit tonight too. I'd almost argue that Van Vliet probably has more upside than Harden, as long as Embiid.
Yeah, as long as Embiid plays, I would go Van Vliet as well. I do like Harden, and if Embiid was limited in some capacity, but we haven't got any news on that. So,
all right, Mitchell busting hard. Did not want to see that. So let's see here. Oh, a Fanduel core. So if you had Fanduel,
I had the same core on Fanduel, just without Tyus Jones.
Yes. So why no Tyus Jones? Because he's like
1,600 more expensive on FanDuel. Like, I think he's fine, but I don't think you have to play him.
Yeah, he's 5,800, and I think we agreed they're different positions, but like Bruce Brown over Tyus Jones in that about salary range from the guardish positions on FanDuel, I think is something I would play too. But I would be playing Bane. So I would be adding Bane to the core basically from Michael Porter, Bruce Brown, and McCollum. I think Bane's probably going to be a core play on FanDuel if you have all the flexibility, and then you can take a chance on Jaren Jackson Jr. if you wanted to. I don't think he's absolutely necessary. Bane would be an addition to my core that I had on FanDuel earlier. Sound good, Justin?
Yep, agreed.
All right. I see no more questions on YouTube. Steve wants to know, scared to play Bones Highland to see the Nugget to fade. You don't have to play Bones Highland at all. I have no problem. He's not even super highly owned tonight. We've got 5% on FanDuel. Bones is 5% on DraftKings. That seems about right.
Yeah, you don't have to play him.
Yeah, you don't have to play him. That shouldn't be a big worry for you tonight, Steve. So I think that's gonna do it for tonight, Justin. When the Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert news hits, Naz Reid enters the core, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we'll keep that in mind, everybody. So you basically got that, and then you're spending up, and you don't need Embiid anymore. Actually, yeah, pencil Naz Reid, pencil in Embiid, pencil in a value play, and you've got yourself a nice looking lineup over on DraftKings. That's going to do it for tonight. Justin, are you going to the Super Bowl party?
No, I can't. It's tax time, so the old CPA
right.
job always gets in the way of that. But
I've got a couple. I've got a couple more questions for you, Justin. I have to decide, should I incorporate myself this year, or I'm gonna have to see. Maybe I'll pester you a little bit more with tax time on that one. Got to get those gambling winnings and losses all lined up in the spreadsheet, Justin.
That's right.
Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Tax time. Good luck, everyone out there tonight. Make sure to stay tuned for that news on Rudy Gobert. If Gobert's out, you're going to want to get Naz Reid into your lineups. Other than that, have a good night. For Justin, I'm Britt. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we out you.